I mean, the old saying, you can't tell me it's raining, while someone's pissing down my leg, right?
Welcome back to The Hot Dish, comfort food for Middle America. I'm Heidi Heitkamp.
And I'm Joel Heitkamp. We're again joined by a hot dish favorite, Jess Piper. Jess lives on a small town, or a small farm, I should say, on the Missouri-Iowa border, and was born and raised in rural America. After the 2016 election of Trump, Jess became politically active, ran for office in 2022. Way to go, for state representative in Northwest Missouri. Since then, you know what she's done? She's become the executive director of Blue Missouri, a grassroots organization that generates donations for Democratic state house candidates. Jess, welcome back to the Hot Dish, and thanks for joining us.
I really appreciate you guys having me here. Joel, we got to meet in person not very long ago. Heidi, I just missed you by a hair. Thank you for having me on again.
Well, you're absolutely terrific, and I want to talk about today kind of what do we know about whether the Democratic Party has actually begun to start paying attention to places like North Dakota, like Western Minnesota, like Missouri, the places that we know that if you run people and if you run good people, you can be competitive. Are you feeling better? You feeling worse? Or are you just, where are you at right now, Jess?
I'm absolutely on fire. I am excited. I'm seeing excitement. And the crazy thing is when I report back about this excitement, I have a lot of Democrats who are trying to to tamp me down and say, don't get excited. Things are really bad. Things are going to be awful forever. And I'm like, you know what? They are really bad right now. But the energy, the excitement, the enthusiasm that I'm seeing all over, on the ground, and I'm talking in rural spaces. I'm going into places where there's like 78 people in the town, right? I am seeing something that I haven't seen. I saw a little bit of it when we put Kamala in as the candidate, but then it's sort of everything just fell apart. And now I'm seeing that enthusiasm coming back, and I'm excited because I just saw that. I'm sure you guys saw too. There's reporting that Democrats are willing to put 7 figures into trying to recruit candidates in rural spaces.
Well, I'm going to say this before I ask you my question, which is, knock it off. Yeah, you came to North Dakota, you spoke at the event, and everybody expects someone to be that good now. So yeah, knock it off. What I would add to that is why? Why do you feel this good? Why are you this energetic? Why are you this hopeful?
Because I live in a MAGA space, because I live in a red state, a ruby red district that has never elected a woman, hasn't elected a Democrat in 32 years. And I look around me and see people talking about economics. I see them saying what is going on right now is absolutely decimating my budget, which is terrible for people, but they know where the pain is coming from. And a lot of times that's on us to when we're knocking doors and doing deep canvassing to try to connect the dots for people. I'm not having to connect the dots right now. People automatically know who is in power. They know the GOP in Missouri has had a supermajority for 22 years. You can't blame a Democrat. We haven't had a statewide Democrat elected since 2018. What are you talking about, right? And then you look at the federal level. They have all 3 branches, and then they've got SCOTUS captured. There is no one to blame this pain on except for the Republicans.
Well, and pain it is. I mean, you look at today, I was looking at statistics. We have record credit card debt. We have record credit card defaults. Where people aren't able to make their bills and pay, and they're putting necessities on their credit card. We have rising, insurance costs. I mean, and Trump keeps saying it's the best economy ever. It's like, and the thing is that if you say something that people don't have kind of a personal connection to, where they don't live it. But then when you say something that's totally contrary to what's happening in people's lives, you lose a lot of credibility. And my sense is that Donald Trump is starting to gain a reputation of being out of touch. Isn't that what you think?
It is what I think. I think that they are over their skis. You can't tell me that things are better when I can see my receipt from Walmart. You can't tell me that things are going great when I see soybean farmers, with gravity wagons driving, millions of pounds of soybeans to a bin where they're going to sit I know this. I know people are talking about, beef from Argentina coming in and what trouble that's going to make for our ranchers. So I'm just talking about issues that are here. I'm someone who's on the ACA. I am self-employed. My insurance premium right now is a little less than $500. I just reapplied and it's $1,062 for next year. I can't do that. My neighbors can't do that. They're on Medicare and they're still seeing rises in costs. They're seeing their doctors leaving and going other places. The old saying, you can't tell me it's raining, while someone's pissing down my leg, right? I know what this is and it ain't rain. So, you can't lie to people's face. They understand. They see their grocery receipts.
Yeah, Jess, the one thing I notice is when you're around a group of people and you used to just feel outnumbered, when you used to bring up some of this stuff and you were like, oh man, hey, I'm the only one that's in this spot. That isn't the case as much anymore. I call it the old Manador VFW all syndrome. When you go there, and Heidi knows a lot about this as well. When you go there, you guys, what you find out now is because of soybeans, most part, they're ticked off. They're really ticked off. And then you add beef into it. And, they don't want these emergency payments, Jess. They don't. They want the market. They'll take them. Don't get me wrong, but they don't want them.
And that's what we have been saying the whole time. And people will say, well, they're going to bail them out. Maybe he will, but here's the point. If they don't have the market, how do you plant next year when you don't have a market for planting? So people aren't remembering that part. And I'm seeing people come together too, just like you are. It used to be kind of a quiet thing if you were a rural Democrat, if you're a rural progressive. And now I see people standing up and speaking more. And you know why? Because other people are doing the same thing. When I would knock doors, people would whisper to me and say, I'm the only Democrat on the block. And I'm like, I just knocked a door 2 doors down and they're a Democrat too. You guys just didn't speak. You didn't put out signs because you were scared or whatever it was. But now I'm seeing that turn around, and people can be proud of not standing with someone who's been, accused of everything from pedophilia to, ripping off investors and students. And so I think we're seeing a lot of people being proud not to be included in that sort of group. And so, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of Democrats that are louder.
I think it's interesting because we talk a lot about the bailout. And I think we all know that for a lot of these soybean farmers, these are folks who have incredible, like millions of dollars of assets. They are people who have had some very good years. They have a lot of new paint on the farmstead. Not saying that they aren't contributing to the economy. But at the same time, what they're saying is we've got billions of dollars to bail you out, but we don't have any money to make sure that people can afford their health insurance. We don't have any money to help people afford their food. We don't have any money to do the things that would help a lot of the working class folks. And, I always remind people, look, if somebody's making $15 an hour or $10 an hour, that's less than $24,000 a year for a full-time job. And so I think that those are the people who step back and say, I don't know that they really understand that I can't afford the gas in my car. I can't afford the car insurance. And God forbid that my car would break down and I would have to buy a part that now is experiencing outrageous increases in prices because of tariffs. And so I think they get it. And I think Trump in some weird way gets it too, but he didn't have any solutions.
And you're talking about something that I was just thinking about today. They don't have solutions for anything. I saw them, talking about a new plan, their healthcare rollout, which we've been waiting for 9 years. It was 2 weeks, and it's been 9 years. But it looks like Trump is going to do the same thing that the Democrats were asking for if he does anything at all. And that's extend the subsidies. And I'm like, why are you guys like this? Why don't you have any ideas about helping the people around you? And you're right to say that, people like my kids did all the right things. They got apprenticeships for carpentry. One is a soldier, and another one was a teacher. And he's now quit teaching because he couldn't afford to live as a teacher in this state. And people like me, I finally got to the age where I thought, I've got most of the kids out of the house. I can start saving for retirement. I can't save for retirement. My kids need me to help them. They can't get by. They can't buy houses. They can't afford childcare and all of these things. And like I said, when all these things, bubble up and people look around, you can really tell who is trying to, help you in some way, pass some sort of legislation, to reduce childcare costs or healthcare costs. And the other ones who are like, screw you. We don't care about you. We're not working for you. And that's basically like in states like Missouri and probably North Dakota and in a lot of places too, where you can look at your representatives and they're like, I don't care. I don't care what you have to say. I'm not working for you.
So 2 points I want to make. The first point being that we've all seen the polls. We know where the approval ratings are. I just think it's like a movie that you've seen 5, 6, 7 times. You're sick of it, and the movie has a bad ending. Let me ask both of you this. I'm really curious what you think about this, because on my talk show, I said a number of times, 80-year-old men, I don't care what side of the aisle you're from, shouldn't be president of the United States. If you're 34, you don't get to be president of the United States. Well, if you're 80, you sure shouldn't be able to. Is anybody noticing how physically he's breaking down? I mean, I don't care which one of you two answer this, but he doesn't look so good, you guys.
He's sleeping through interviews. I just watched an interview of him with Marco Rubio speaking next to him, and he is dozing off. There's something, very wrong with him. And when you talk about, things like that, I don't want to be ageist. I don't want to come across as ageist at all. But you've got Chuck Grassley, who will be 96 and has not said he's not going to run for Congress again. I mean, something's got to give. You've got Mitch McConnell, who has terrible, health issues, falling down and passing out during, when he should be on the Capitol floor. So I see he's breaking down.
Well, I think the reason why he's falling asleep is because he rage tweeted 100 tweets the night before. I don't think he sleeps. I think he needs some melatonin or something that is going to put him back on. But I'll tell you, the reason why he gets by with that and Joe Biden didn't is because he'll walk to the back of the plane and mix it up with the reporters. Yeah. The things that he likes to do, which is to be in the limelight, to be talking, even if he says ridiculous things, he can still do those. And so, I think that people say, look, yeah, he may be taking a nap, in middle of important meetings, but he's still mixing it up and making decisions that I either like or I don't like. And so, Joel, I know this dust up with Governor Walz talking about, what's the MRI? I think this is funny because my husband said, when he said he had an MRI, you get an MRI for a lot of reasons. No one doubted it wasn't an MRI of his brain. It was taken for granted, right? It could have been his knee. It could have been his, chest. But, I think that there is some camouflage going on about his healthcare needs. But as long as he gets up and he's feisty and throws those punches, whether it's, shut up, piggy, or whatever it is, people will say he's still able.
Yeah, but he's always been good at drawing attention. I mean, he always has been. Ask his, look at what his sister said about him. Look what his niece says about him. But it's different. I mean, it's just different. I mean, we all have lived that kind of life where we've worked outside, worked with our hands, that type of thing. I don't believe he ever has. But, so I think that there's bound to be a little less deterioration. It may be a bone spur on your foot here and there. But what I'm talking about is just the way he talks, just the way he walks. I might be overstating this. I don't believe I am. I think that they're not telling us something. I think I think we're going to find some things out.
I agree with that. I think that there's more to the story than is being told right now. But the bottom line is he still holds the party with an iron fist. He still is making the decisions. It seems to be slipping a little bit. as and Jess, I want to talk a little bit about Tennessee, because that election, as we're talking right now, people are out voting, and you've worked with the Democratic candidate in Tennessee. You've been working with that candidate, talking about how to talk about rural issues, and I want you to visit about that. But I think one thing that's remarkable about that campaign is the Republican has not embraced Trump. They haven't run any ads saying, "Oh, I love Donald Trump, I'm going there to." I mean, it's been very local. So, are you seeing that trend kind of across the board in certainly in the South?
I mean, I am. And Afton Bain is an absolutely incredible candidate. You couldn't ask for a better candidate. She's very connected to rural voters. She's worked in a space where she has gone out and tried to warn her constituents that ICE is coming. She was thrown out of the General Assembly room when she was 19 or 20 because she was protesting the abortion ban. And they have these crazy pictures of her like holding on to a railing, and the state police pulling her away, and they're like trying to make her some sort of criminal. And I was like, no, she was standing up for your rights. But she understands what it's like to live in a rural space and to be able to talk to rural people about what's going on. She's worked with rural organizing for a decade nearly. So she's a great candidate. And on top of that, you also have a very, very unpopular president. So you have, her opponent, like you said, not leaning into Trumpism because he can't, because he's embroiled in the Epstein mess, because of the tariffs, because we are, committing war crimes by bombing Venezuelan fishing boats. And that's really deeply concerning to Republicans. He told them no more wars. And what is he doing right now? So there's a lot of reasons this opponent of Afton's can't latch on to Trump, and every single one of them is, real to his voters. So he has to distance himself. And like you said, I mean, this is a long shot. But if anyone can get it done, it's Afton, and it couldn't be at a better time because of what is going on, with Republicans.
So, Heidi, my question is to you. What's a win here? As we have this conversation, voting is going on in Tennessee. Obviously, a lot of folks that are going to watch and listen to this here on the Hot Dish are going to know what the results are. I get that. But what do you think a win is in this election?
I think a win is for her to come within 4 or 5 points. And certainly, it would be earth shattering if she won in that district. But this has been a trend all along, including special elections in Florida, the special elections that we saw the elections that we saw in New Jersey, which was a landslide that no one predicted. They thought it was only going to be 3 points. It ended up double digits. Abigail did really well in Virginia. And so what I do is I look at the margins. And so how much of that has shifted. I also look at the rural vote, and in all those places, there's been a come home or a tapping down of turnout. I wouldn't say necessarily people changing their mind, but Trump keeps saying, well, I wasn't on the ballot. Trump's always on the ballot. He's, no matter what, he's always on the ballot. But by the same token, there wasn't, I mean, people are like, well, I don't care about that race. And so they are what we call low propensity voters. And so right now, what you have is high propensity voters, i.e. motivated Democrats who are going out and making huge statements. And if that continues into the midterms, that a margin of 5 or less will scare the shit out of the Republican majority in the House.
What do you think, Jess?
I think she's got a shot. And I think that Heidi is spot on. The whole thing too about running everywhere is reducing those margins. In places like where I ran, I didn't have a shot. Okay, I got 25% of the vote. But the fact that we're telling people just leave that 25% on the table is outrageous, right? The fact that we say there's no way that you can win, so there's no reason to run is insanity, because getting all those people to run in districts that won't flip still gets people out. They're still voting, and it change happens at the top. And everyone's really focused right now, and we can focus on Afton because she's the only congressional race, in the game at the moment. I think, there's movement for change, and even if she doesn't flip that tonight or tomorrow, it's going to scare the shit out of them, just like Heidi said.
Yeah, from my standpoint, you're first off, you're spot on, right? Having served in the legislature for 14 years, the races that we didn't win for sure were the ones where we didn't have a candidate. We knew we were going to lose those ones, right? And so, we're looking for candidates in my home district, and normally people don't take meetings. They're taking meetings. I and a couple others are on the search committee, and you know, we've got a couple of really good people interested. And these aren't, boy, I'll just put my name on the ballot kind of guys. I mean, these are the guys that are willing to go find out if the little dogs bite. I mean, they're going to knock on doors. So I don't know if you're seeing that. I know that that's what you've been working so hard on, Jess. But I like it. I like that I don't feel like I have to beg people as much as I did before.
The one thing I want to say too, Joel, is when you run candidates and you actually have a dialogue, you can change minds. And people say, "Oh, I agree with that, Jess. She's right about schools. She's right about what's happening with county roads. Or township roads." And so they may not vote for her because they're Republicans, but she normalizes the Democratic Party. And when the only thing that people see who are Democrats is Washington Democrats, we're going to continue to lose. And that's why we need to run local Democrats who understand these issues, Democrats who aren't walking lockstep with the National Democratic Party, people who have different ideas. We don't have litmus tests. And so to me, all of that is a rebranding. Getting people to run is a rebranding exercise that we desperately need in the middle of the country.
It really is. And, I knocked on a whole lot of doors, and the difference between what I want and what a Republican wants is this much.
Yep.
That much. Mm-hmm. And people would always say, they would listen to everything I said and agree with it. And then, of course, they'd say, well, I'm a Christian, I can't vote for you. But we can get past that. And that's what a lot of people need to know if they're, paying attention to national politics and don't really know much about the heartland or anything like that. Religion is very tied up in the politics and vice versa. So that's something that we need local candidates for. And people ask me all the time, what's the best candidate? What is your ideal candidate? The only ideal candidate is the candidate who understands their neighbors, who understands their community, who understands their district, because you don't have to have the, crazy, wild, whatever it is, to win. You just have to know your space. And that's why you said, Heidi, when you're talking about national Democrats, what goes in DC is not going to go in Burlington Junction, Missouri. We've got to understand that. And that's why you have your local candidates knocking doors. Even if they're not going to win, it's still changing minds. When I knocked doors, people couldn't believe I was a Democrat. I don't look like what they show on Fox News or OAN or Newsmax. I don't fit any of those categories. They cannot believe that I talk like them, that I'm from where they're from, that I'm a gun owner, that I'm a grandma, we have cows and chickens and a little donkey that I absolutely adore because I'm from this community. I represent the community. And that's how we win, is putting people on the ballot that represent their community.
I want to throw something into the conversation, though. It had to have been about 3 weeks ago. I spoke at a Democratic event just in Minnesota. Normally a crowd of 100, a crowd of 250, and it wasn't because Joel Heitkamp was going there. Trust me. They're energized. They're excited. They've got candidates. But I said some things that night that ticked some people off. And I'm going to throw this into our conversation, which is, look, we can have social issues. We can. And those social issues, I think Democrats will be there to do the right thing on. But that isn't what these races are about. And if we focus on them, all we're doing is playing into the hand of what the Republicans want us to talk about. I think we did that in the last presidential race. I think we do that in the motivation why certain candidates come into the race. And afterwards, watch me get in trouble here. Afterwards, I had a mother of someone who is dealing with their sexuality uh, come up and just chew my ass and say, "Listen, these are the issues." And I said, I could not possibly disagree with you more. Those are the issues that we need to be there and help. But if we're not talking about roads and bridges and water and sewer and as you mentioned, the activities of your church and how you got to sing every verse at the Lutheran church, whereas at the Catholic one, we don't, if, I mean, those things, Jess, they got me in a little trouble that night, but I saw a lot of heads doing this when I brought it up. I don't know what you see.
Well, I see that obviously we support trans people. Obviously, we support abortion rights. Obviously, we support the LGBT community. However, when you're knocking on a door, and this works both ways. I never had someone come to the door and ask about the bathroom a kid uses at school. Never. I never had someone say, yeah, but my kid might lose out on a scholarship to Mizzou because of a trans athlete. Never. So the things that we need to focus on are things that everybody is concerned about, while also being completely upset, accepting of our party and what we stand for everybody. And that means everybody. And, rural people aren't marginalized people. However, they kind of are, right? They don't really matter to most people. And so I kind of, and because, I have relatives that fall all over the spectrum, I understand what it feels like to feel like you don't matter. And maybe that's what that mom thought. Maybe she thought that you said, my son doesn't matter. It's not what you said. What you said is, of course your son matters, but I don't know if I need to talk about trans kids when I'm knocking on a door, unless it comes up, right? But other than that, what you're doing is what Democrats do, have this huge umbrella where people can fit in and find their group and know that they're supported and loved for who they are.
Well, I agree
think
with all of that.
yeah.
I do. I'm just saying that every campaign I've ever seen win, and Heidi, you did this when you ran for the Senate and you won. It wasn't 10, 15 issues. It wasn't.
Yeah.
You had message and you stayed on message, and everybody has their own message. But what I'm telling everybody when I speak at these different events is find the message that connects with the majority of the people out there that's on their mind. You said that earlier, Jess. You say that in your book. I just think we as Democrats fall into that rat hole way too many times.
Yeah, I think that we don't know how to kind of respond. I always go back, Joel, to what our dad used to say when we come home and complain about somebody. He'd say, well, how's that person hurting you? How's that person hurting you?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why do you care? You should care about whether you can afford, to put tires on your car.
Mm-hmm.
You should care about whether you can afford to send your kids to college. You should care about whether you can afford your health insurance. Those are things that are the economic issues that define us. And, I always say that the people say, well, what's the difference between Democrats and Republicans? And I always say Democrats believe in trickle up and Republicans believe in trickle down. I mean, they think if the money goes to the richest, eventually that will make the economy better. I said the Democrats have always been the party that invests in people. They invest in human beings. And that's what we're about. We're about making sure that every child has a chance, that every child has a good start, that every family has an opportunity to be successful. And for us in rural America, that challenge is getting tougher and tougher, because not just because of what's happening with the ag economy, but also rural America is small manufacturers. The tariffs are tearing apart our small manufacturing base. The mom and pop manufacturers aren't making it. I mean, you hear story after story, and, debt is becoming a huge problem, and healthcare is going to be a huge issue. And so there's a lot for us to talk about in rural America. Are we going to win back rural America? We're probably not going to win in rural America, but I will tell you, if we pick up 15 points, we can win everywhere.
Yeah. Jess, obviously we're going to have to go, and you want to go because you're out there changing the world, but how do people find your book? Tell people about it.
So I haven't written a book yet, but maybe someday. But I do have a Substack, so that may be what you're referring to. But
Well, why
I'm
did my sister-in-law hand me a bunch of stuff to read that you wrote? What's this all about?
So I write a Substack 2 or 3 times a week. I put out an essay, so I should maybe combine those. But it's The View from Rural Missouri, and I talk about what's going on in the heartland. And you guys, if you're not on Substack, maybe you should think about it too, because we have a lot of friends on the coast who thought, you know what, people in Missouri just vote against their self-interest. And then I told them, you know what? I don't have anyone to vote for. And they're like, oh my God, I had no idea you didn't have Democrats running. So The View from Rural Missouri, I'm on the platforms except for Twitter. I ghosted 160,000 people. I am done. And you guys know about that big dust up about how all those accounts were actually from other countries. So I'm glad I left now. But I really do appreciate both of you. And thank you for having me on, even with my technical difficulties, because I live in BFE.
Maybe that's why Renee gave me a stack of papers too. So Jess, thanks for joining us here on the Hot Dish. Appreciate it.
And you are just absolutely the right solution for the problem that we have in rural America. Keep it up. And if we can if we can get one of you in every one of these states, guess what? The world will change. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you, friends. And I guarantee you there is one of me in every state. They just they weren't obnoxious enough online. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks for joining us. So, Heidi, I want to talk about loyalty. In this case, it isn't so much the loyalty of a person to the president of the United States like Pete Hegseth does. I'm sure he mows Donald Trump's yard. I'm talking about the other way around. I'm talking about the loyalty that Donald Trump has to people that he knows are trouble. In this case, Pete Hegseth. I mean, what we saw happen in the high seas is disgusting. It is nothing but disgusting. And where do you see your old friends in Congress, in the United States Senate, taking this?
I will guarantee you that there are pullaways. By that, I mean people going on to the floor of the Senate, pulling people aside and saying, really, you're going to let this happen? This is what you think is appropriate? And I think Roger Wicker this weekend stood tall and said, this needs to be investigated. I think that Mike Rogers said the same thing over in the House. And so I think it just, the look of this is just so bad. And you saw what Hegseth did. He threw the admiral under the bus. Well, what a great, leader he is. And I didn't see it. And, I'm the Secretary of War. Somehow doesn't know what's happening with something absolutely that significant. And so my concern is, at what point do the other Latin American countries say enough is enough? This is, you might expect this from Russia. We never expected this from the United States of America.
And I think it goes further than the Latin American countries. I think it goes to Europe. I think that they look at us and say, you know what, you can't trust these guys. You can't trust them with information. You can't trust them as allies. They turn on you in 2 seconds. I think it goes beyond that. But I don't trust these guys, the Republicans, to actually do what's right on this. They can talk on the Sunday shows all they want. They're one phone call away from waking up afraid again and wetting the bed. I mean, I hope you're right. I do. I pray to God you're right, that they actually start doing their job as Congress. But I guess we're talking about 6 years. And then if you add in the 4 of Biden, that's 11 years or 9 years, I should say, that you're left scratching your head, Well,
it's interesting. I think the Tennessee race that we just talked about, where people are starting to distance themselves from Trump, they're starting to see, and the poll numbers are horrible. Of course, he's going to dispute that and say he's got the best poll numbers, the best economy in the history of the world. But you can't hide a lot of the stuff that's been going on. And this may be inside baseball because, is the average person in America going to think blowing up two people floating on a log or on a piece of a boat in the ocean is a loss to humanity? But, remember this. This comes at the same time that this president has pardoned a known drug runner from El Salvador. You explain that to me. And pardoning fraudsters. I mean, this is the biggest grift. And so I think that you've got to look at, kind of widen the aperture to get people to really start thinking about this. He's blowing up, I'm not going to say innocent people, but certainly helpless people in middle of the Caribbean, and then pardoning known drug dealers.
Oh.
Explain that to me.
I want people to know what I was getting at with my math, just so you know I can do math. I mean, he started and entered our life in 2015. He did. I mean, he was been part of our life politically since 2015, which, look at that kid you got that's, was just born then, and see how tall they are now. That being said, it also comes at a time when former colleagues of yours and new members of the Senate and the House that serve this country in uniform that are Democrats said to people in the military that, you don't have to do this. If it's an illegal order, you don't have to do this. And so to me, to have the timing be such that that's all still a controversy, where Donald Trump's saying that they're traitors and they should be hung, and then shortly thereafter, it's one of two things. Either they committed a war crime or they murdered. I mean, it's one of those two things, Heidi.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you by any code of international justice or military justice, you do not murder helpless people in the sea. And without a declaration of war. I mean, think about this. There's no declaration of war. The so-called emergency is that they're running drugs. We've never seen any proof that they're running drugs. I wouldn't dispute it, but let's see the proof. And the last time there were two survivors, guess what they did? They sent them home. Why would they send them home? What are they afraid that these folks are going to basically talk about?
Yeah.
I mean,
the other thing I would add is, you've got connections to south of Tucson, and I did a radio show or two down there where we talked about and visited with the farmers and ranchers. I shouldn't say farmers; they were all ranchers. And the one thing that these very, very conservative men and women said to me was that the individuals that are crossing the border, bringing in drugs, doing all this, are being forced to. That they've met them, they've that these individuals are being forced to do this because their families are being held hostage back home. So why would that be any different than what these individuals in the boats are doing? And this is a big if you assume there's drugs in those boats. I mean, Heidi, we don't know who the people in the boats are.
No. It is the classic kind of legislation by Rambo, right? There's no rules. No rules apply to Donald Trump as he deploys his international strategies. And I will tell you, and Jess hit on this too, that a lot of people, and I've met, I was at the Iowa caucus, I listened to the arguments of Trump over Nikki Haley. And one of the strongest arguments that people made were from veterans who said he doesn't believe in forever wars. You think he's pretty close to going to war in Venezuela?
Yeah. Well, that's about oil. That isn't about drugs. The whole thing is about oil. It's about money. It's about the people that he surrounds himself with. Let me ask you this. The economy today, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you see it?
It depends on who you are.
Well, let's assume I'm not a billionaire, or not
Okay,
somebody
let's
who's in.
assume that you're somebody making less than $150,000 a year. This economy is really bad for you. Number one, you have job insecurity. You don't know, you aren't feeling secure in your job, and you are not, as we have saw in kind of during the Biden years, people were job moving. They were going, oh, I can find a better opportunity here. There were labor shortages, and now people are hunkering down. They're taking a smaller bonus or a smaller pay increase, and the bottom quartile or the bottom third, their wages aren't increasing enough to keep up with inflation. And they're already in debt. There's an interesting chart that I saw today of the amount of defaults on consumer debt. And so we're going to see what happens. And the consumers so far have been spending money this Christmas, and people will say, oh, Heitkamp, you're so full of it. Look at that. And I want to say how much of that's getting paid by cash and how much of that's getting put on the credit card. And when does that come home to roost when credit card interests are 28%? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, it's untenable. We talk a lot about debt and deficit for the federal government, but I'm really concerned about consumer debt.
Well, the one tell for me in what you just described is how many 28-year-olds are you seeing buying a home? How many people are buying a home at that age? My wife and I were fortunate enough to be able to do it, but you're not seeing people like my producer who has a fairly good job be able to buy a home. It's just not in the cards for them. So that separation continues to get wider and wider. There's no
Yeah.
question about that.
I think that at some point the analysis on home ownership is how many people want to actually own a home, have the responsibility of owning a home. But the bottom line, when you look at kind of trying to make ends meet, it's the old hamburger helper example. When ground beef is $6-7 a pound, they're going to try and stretch that as best they can. They aren't going to eat out. McDonald's has seen a dramatic reduction in lower income Americans actually eating at McDonald's. And you're going to see those trends continue because people can't afford it.
Yeah. Well, I think for the most part, people still in America want to own a home. And we're going to find out where that goes. And it's really sad to me that they're not able to right now. But at least you could take out, what is it, a 50-year mortgage that he's proposing now? I mean, in other words, you'll never own it, but you can borrow money.
I think when you look at the numbers, it's like $200 less a month, and you're going to pay for 50 years. It's just
exactly.
It was boneheaded to begin with, absolutely boneheaded.
Yeah.
So, Joel, when you the question people always ask is, do you see any trends? I mean, you talked a little bit about more people stepping up, wanting to run, more people coming to meetings, but do you see any trends in terms of the break in kind of the president's overall, for lack of a better word, kind of popularity?
Well, living here where the hot dish is, in the middle of this country, I think that the two biggest mistakes he's made economically have been soybeans and beef. And you could throw corn in there too. I mean, you could throw Mexico and Canada and everything that goes with it, because all of that relates back to something that farmers value a lot, which is their equipment. And if they're not making money, they might be able to buy that hamburger you're talking about. I'm not trying to pretend they're going broke completely. What I'm trying to say is they're not able to do what they have been able to do for the previous 4 years. And so they're starting to admit that. And what I always remind them of, and Heidi, I know that you always kind of roll your eyes at me on this, but I call it the bathroom test, which is when you go to most public bathrooms now, there's advertising. I'm sure there is in women's stalls. Certainly there is with men's urinals, but those ads used to say help wanted, help wanted, help wanted, help wanted. I mean, this is how I did my research, folks. They don't say that anymore. I mean, go to a pub, look at those signs, and what you're going to find is they're not saying help wanted anymore. That people are trying to sell things, and they're trying to sell them cheap. And so I just think, as you say, the economy isn't doing well for the people that hang out in the bars and restaurants that I do. How's that?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Well, listen, another episode of The Hot Dish. Thanks for joining us today on The Hot Dish, brought to you by One Country Project, making sure the voices of the rest of us are heard in Washington, D.C.
Learn more at onecountryproject.org. That's onecountryproject.org. We'll be back next week with more Hot Dish, comfort food for rural America.
Hot Topica.